It can show you a little bit how we can go from film finance to other sectors and different types of projects in the creative industry. Maybe that could be of interest to you. Second, very quick perspective about what's happening in film finance in Europe today. But I guess most of you know about that, so it's very short. It's really just to say that we have to go into new ideas and new models. That's what Joanna was asking me to talk about. So the last part is really about giving, 4 ways where to go and to find something beyond film financing. That's a little bit the idea with some examples. I guess the idea to do it at the beginning of the day was that, and I saw in the program as far as my Polish I could understand, but there are obviously many subjects that you have during the afternoon that are back to different subjects and topics I'm talking about this morning. So I guess it's a kind of introduction, and then you will have different presentations during the day. Okay, so Peacefullfish were based in Berlin, in Brussels, and very soon in London with also a Polish colleague that is here today, will join us to work in London as from January. And what we do is basically we're trying to work between 3 points. One on policy and finance, because that's where we see most of our value, and between production and digital distribution. So we're trying to act between these different topics. Our clients are basically content producers a little bit, so a few producers, but not so much, to be honest. Most of our clients are public and financial institutions. So we are working, of course, for the European Commission, but we're working for many film commissions and regions and governments, and we actually also work for some banks and also for different funds across Europe. And we do a little bit on the service side as well, and I heard before talking about cinema. We've been also involved a lot in digital distribution, digital cinema in particular. So that's something as well that we are working on. Just a few ideas, because we are also invited by media today, so I thought it was interesting. We are doing different projects with the support of media. The first one is a training program, Closing the Gap, which basically is to prepare producers to access equity financing. So it's a 6-month program where 12 producers every year are learning how to develop a business plan, to develop their pitch to equity investors, and at the end of the program, they actually pitch in front of real investors. So I'm not talking about financiers, broadcasters or distributors. I'm talking really about investors, so people with venture capital, business angel, people like that. And we've been doing it now for 2 years. We are just starting a new program this year with media, 2013, called Enter, which is basically to help financiers to understand our sector. I hope everybody will agree that we are suffering from a kind of bad image to the financier. Bad image, but also obviously a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. What do we do? How does it work? How does it work from production to distribution? So the idea of this course is to try to bring about 10 financiers who are not involved in film today, and to bring them on board on the training, to meet producers, to meet distributors, to meet broadcasters, subsidy, and to understand the risk and the opportunities to invest or to put money into projects. So hopefully that will help to bring, which is quite incredible, to bring about 10 new financiers in Europe every year. That's a bit the idea. So if we manage to get that, I think we can increase the potential quite quickly after a few years. We also do 2 markets with media. The first one is the production finance market. Maybe some of you know it, because I know that some Polish companies have been at the market. It was in October in London, every October. We've been doing that now for 5 years, I think. And we are bringing about 40 financiers to meet 40 producers for around Europe. And it's a kind of very intense 2-day programs on that. And then this week we did the second time a co-production market on 3D films. It's the only 3D co-production market in Europe, maybe in the world. I think there is something a bit similar in South Korea. but it happens in Liège, and unfortunately I was not there this week because I was sick, but my colleagues were there, obviously, and we brought 20 production from Europe to pitch in front of a jury of 12 financiers, and also including broadcasters, but also there was a co-production market. That means there were many co-producers coming. And then to give you a bit of idea of what we are doing, the first thing is we do quite a lot of projects on policy research. So basically, it's a lot about developing financial systems for different countries. It goes from tax credit to film funds. For example, we've done a lot of work in Norway. We created 3 film funds in Norway and the tax credit in Norway. In Estonia, in Croatia, in Malta, the tax credit. And currently in the Netherlands, we have just finished a big work in the Netherlands to change the way to finance production in the Netherlands. In terms of regions, we've been doing quite a lot of work in Germany, in Frankfurt, in Italy, but also working on different countries like Barcelona or London and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, different places. At the moment, we're working on Kosovo, which is a very small but interesting place where we are developing some project, and then we are working on, and I'll talk about it a bit more later, we are working on a big fund in Paris at the moment. In terms of media research project, I will talk again about it later. We did quite a big study, extensive study on the role of banks in Europe. That's why, since then I've got a very big love and interest for bankers. So it was 4 years ago, and we spoke to quite a lot of banks across Europe, and really trying to understand, how they think, and how we can involve them in the sector, because that's really the main point, I think, is to understand how we can bring them into this sector. So going back to the banking, we created the Media Production Guarantee Fund with media. So I will talk about it after. As I say, digital cinema, we've been working a lot about that. And we did in particular quite a big digital pilot project on digital cinema for social network, local social network for local cinemas. Interesting, and also linked to the presentation just before, we just finished quite a big study for Eurimage on the new distribution scheme, because you may know that Eurimage has a distribution scheme, in fact, for the non-media countries. So especially today, the big 2 are Russia and Turkey, and then on top you have Macedonia, Albania, missing 1 or 2, but mostly for Turkey and Russia. And we've been working on creating a new distribution scheme. And obviously, it talks a lot about digital distribution, digital platform, and also marketing. So it's in discussion at the moment at the Eurimage representation, I think this week. And so hopefully we will know about it more next year. Also, I wanted to mention a few other projects that we are doing outside the media and the digiculture. Because just to say that, today, the audiovisual sector, the creative industry sector, is not only in culture. It's going everywhere. It's what we call in Brussels the spillover. It's going from media, from the entertainment to the other sectors, and I think it's one of the way as well to develop new financial ways. So the first thing is, for example, the DG Enterprise. The Directorate General in Enterprise is very interested about that. They have created the Creative Alliance. And for example, we did quite a big project for about 3 years. That stops in August, about developing new financial tools between different big media clusters. So in Rome, Paris, Barcelona, Malta, and Amsterdam. So there are some new tools as well to access. We have just finished a very extensive study this summer for another consortium from Europe called CI Factor. So it's a creative industry factor, where we did a questionnaire to 250 investors and lots of telephone interviews to understand what are the barriers to invest in the creative industry. So first, there are a lot of barriers, unfortunately. But second is that it's mainly a problem of expertise. I mean, mainly the investors don't understand what it's about, how does it work, who are the players, how reliable they are, what sort of market they are working in. It's just very, very big question about the knowledge, the understanding this market. So I think we need to do a very big work of explaining to financiers and to bankers what do we do, how do we do it, to be much more transparent, to explain to them the different value chain, the different people involved in that, who is taking which commission, how does it work, how do you collect the rights. I think once they understand that, I think it will be much better. Because generally, I would say people are not against investing in this industry. I think it's really a question of expertise. There are a few other problems, obviously, we will talk about it, but I think the main problem is the lack of expertise and understanding the market. Digiculture, we are just starting a new project with Digiculture on linking technology and culture, so not just audiovisual, but also music, dance, theater, etc. So I think there may be some interesting opportunities there. And then finally, I think something that could be of interest as well is we won about 6 months ago quite a big project on film and tourism, which is an Interreg project to try to understand the links between the film industry, the audiovisual industry, and the tourism in the different regions. And in fact, part of this project is also a Polish region. So there are about 7 or 8 regions part of it. Ah, yes, that's much better. Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's just to show you that in terms of accesses financing and people interested in looking at finance for the sector, it's not just happening in a part like in culture or just in the audiovisual industry. It's something that is really broad now. And I think that's important to be able to work with other sectors. Just one thing on 2 sister companies that we have that maybe you will be interested to know about. The first one is an investment network that we created 3 years ago, which is called Media Deals. And it's basically, we have about now 45 members that are business angel, venture capital company, and private funds. I mean, all of them are private funds. And these people are interested in what we call media tech. Media tech is a little bit at the crossing between media and technology. Obviously, the technology angle is very interesting for them, but we're trying to look at really companies with content, but using technology. We are working on different investment forums, so that we organize regularly, where we can have 10 companies from the content industry to pitch in front of investors. So that's something, obviously, that if some companies are interested to join, of course, we select companies, but we'll be obviously interested to get more people from Poland. In fact, we tried last year to do a forum like that in Warsaw. It didn't work at the end, but hopefully we can try to do that, because we saw that there were some interesting companies in Poland and some investors interested in investing in Poland. Obviously, as you know, there are quite a lot of investors in Poland, more on the technology side, of course. But for example, we have at least 3 examples of people in Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, who are looking at Poland, for example, to invest in. So definitely there are some opportunities there. And the last part is about a company that we created, which is called Just Temptation, which is based on film music. And basically, it's a fund who take over the music budget for producers, either for film or video game. So that's something that could be interesting and being part of the financing of a film. In fact, we've just financed a Polish movie where we paid the first tranche about 3 weeks ago, or something like that. So it's also working, obviously, everywhere in Europe. And it's really a budget dedicated only to music. And I'm sure, as you know, all the producers there, music is very important, but for some reason, when it's coming to post-production of the end of a film, there's not much money for the music. So it's also an interesting part for producers to access some financing. No, we invested in the film music. We took over the film music side. Okay, just with just annotation. Right. Okay, so there was a music budget, obviously, and we took over that. We pay that and found the composer to do it, and yeah, that's basically money that we bring to the producer to do the film. In that case, to finish the film. Okay, so now going into the way to finance. I mean, I suppose for most of you it's nothing new, but I just wanted to make sure that we get all on the same page. I mean, obviously, the first thing is that there are two ways of financing movies in the world. On one side, you have a kind of more US, Asian way of doing it, and on the other side, more on the European side. These two models are converging in a way, but still they are coming from very different angles, from very different backgrounds, and today they are very different. So of course in the US it's very equity driven, it's about the commercial property, the producer is a shareholder in the project, the financing is coming mostly from commercial and financing, private investment, and the idea is to close the budget really from the US and then to sell it or pre-sell it or sell it to the rest of the world. In Europe, obviously, the film is seen more as a cultural property. I mean, I think that's things that are like that are moving, but it's still something like that. The producer doesn't really have his own equity resources. He's just developing the project, and the financing is coming mostly from soft money, with obviously some commercial money from broadcasters and pre-sales. But obviously, a lot of it is soft money or quasi-soft money. The distribution is a lot of domestic deal, or of course through co-production to have different deals in different countries. But unfortunately, this project don't travel everywhere like the American films are doing. Obviously, we're talking about very different types of budgets and very different size of budget, but it's a bit the reality. And then you have what we call real co-production, but of course you all know, which is based on a co-production treaty. You know, it could be a bilateral, multilateral, and then it can be just a co-financing, which we still call co-production in a way, but they are just independent and they're just different companies working on that. So obviously the US has no, obviously no, but the US has no co-production treaty, but still you see a lot of projects between the US and other countries. For example, we're doing at the moment a US-German co-production. It's not based on a treaty, but still there is some private money from the US and private money from Germany coming together for the project. So it's just to be really clear about this type of co-production. In terms of the film financing mix, I mean, basically there are these different parts. You have some subsidies at at the European level. You have obviously the national, which is on the production. Don't forget that the European at the European level is just on development and distribution, and that production is really left to the countries, to the different nations. And then the regions have been taking a very important role. Not so much, I would say, in Poland, to be honest, compared to other countries, but in many, many countries, most of the money, a big part of the money is now coming from the regions. If you look at Italy, if you look at Germany, I mean, obviously, it's a very federal country, but the money is not coming from the center, it's coming from the different regions. Okay, and there are a lot of public regional funds, and obviously it's always difficult to access that. You have some tax incentive, talk about it, and then of course some pre-sales, and then you can have some state or private banks who could be involved. Then you have quite a lot of production deals, especially in Germany, in the UK, well in Poland as well. You have now some studios doing that are part of the financing model. And then you could have some equity and private investor funds. So that's obviously what we are going to talk about after. So public funding in Europe, the concept that is very important to understand is the location spend, the local spend, location spend. That means that most of the subsidy that are given, it depends, there are different differences, but mostly in Europe, they are based on what you spend in the country or in the region. So depending on this amount, you will get some money, or you will have to spend the same amount or more in the region. So it's obviously very important to understand from the beginning and to develop a strategy on where to finance the movie, which country, which regions to put together, so that it's compatible. The motivation, obviously, is a local economic effect. So again, we're not talking about a return on investment for that part. I mean, the public bodies, most of the time, they are not interested in having a return in terms of money, but to have a local effect, economic effect. So that you're spending money, you're taking hotels, you're hiring people, things like that, so you have a kind of an economic spend. And of course, it works. We know it works. I mean, we know that about €1 that is given brings back between 2 and 6 euros. I mean, all the different studies on regional funds and tax incentive in Europe show that it works. So obviously, many countries are working on that today. But, as I say, it's not a return on investment. And that is very important to understand. The criteria to choose project for subsidy is obviously not necessarily based on the commercial part, but more on the local effect. Okay? What will be the local effect of that? Eurimage, quickly, I suppose you know very well Eurimage, but Eurimage is a system that is, beyond the European Union. It's the Council of Europe, so there are more countries. As I said, for example, Turkey and Russia are part now of Eurimage. I mean, Russia not for a long time ago, so obviously it opens to new markets, and it's a system that brings money in production mainly, as I say, a little bit in distribution for the non-media countries. But it's really based on co-production. You need to have at least 2 countries from Eurimage members to do a co-production together to be able to access some money. The amounts are quite interesting. Media, I suppose Joanna has talked a lot about it, but it's, as I say, development and distribution, not production. Of course, training and promotion is also part of it. It's all the different EU members, obviously, plus the countries like Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and then the new accessing country for European Union, like Croatia and now Bosnia-Herzegovina is part of it. So it starts to be very big. Tax incentive. So that's obviously something important. So I guess some of you know about it. Just to clarify a bit how it works and the differences, because sometimes there's a bit of confusion. You have 2 types. The first one is what we can call maybe tax shelters. It means that they are giving a kind of tax incentive to people or to companies in certain countries. Okay? So in fact, if you look carefully today, there are only 2 or 3 countries offering that today in Europe. You have mostly Belgium, which is the biggest one with tax shelter, with a tax shelter that is for companies. So companies in Belgium, who are based in Belgium, can invest their profit into the film industry and get a write-off on their tax. Okay? You have a little bit of that in France, that has been there for 20 years under the name Sofica, but it's much smaller. It's for people. It's not for companies. It's for people. Basically, people who want to invest, they can put that, they get the write-off. But today it's going down. It's less and less interesting, and because of the new austerity politics everywhere in Europe, including in France, Sofica will be less and less interesting for investors, meaning that there will be less money going from Sofica in the future for film. In the UK, it's a little bit different. In the UK, maybe some of you know about that. It's a tax incentive which is called EIS. It's an enterprise investment scheme. It's basically a tax incentive given to startups, and especially technology startups. But it's been open to media, to film companies recently. That means so film companies can also benefit from that. And it's the same thing. It's for people to access a tax advantage to be able to put money into film. I mean, the big benefit of this program is obviously for this government, all these tax credits are financed by the public, I mean by companies of the public, so they don't have to create a specific budget for it, so it's very interesting. I would say the problem we see, especially in Belgium or in France, is that through the tax advantage, you don't really build the expertise of these investors. Meaning, the first criteria why they invest is because they get a tax write-off. So they don't invest because they understand this project is interesting or could bring some money back, and like they would look at any company. No, they invest because they have a tax write-off, and yeah, okay, if it's a success, they get something. But it's not really developing the expertise, which is back from what I said at the beginning. What is lacking is understanding the business, and through this tax incentive, people are not really learning about the real business. So it's positive, and in Belgium, we see that now Belgium is becoming at the center of European film finance because of that. But the companies who have put money in the tax incentive, if you ask them in which film they invested or are they interested, they don't really know. I mean, some may know and some may use it for publicity reason or things like that, but it's not, it's not a real expertise development that has been done. And then, very different, what we call tax credit, which in fact, to be honest, had nothing to do with tax. That's why it's a kind of strange name. So in fact, we prefer to call it cash rebate, because that's basically what it is. It's a cash rebate. It has nothing to do with tax in terms of, from the tax authorities. It's just a rebate, meaning you spend X money in one country and we give you back 20%. So it's like a cash rebate, so a discount. It's very, very simple. As you see, it is something that has been developed a lot in the last years. There are still some countries that are not completely convinced by it. I mean, especially Scandinavia. Scandinavia has definitely a big question about why using a tax credit for their country. I mean, you see, of course, that Poland is not part of it as well. Here in the south, they are starting to come. So Croatia has started last year. We've created one there. Kosovo is looking into that. Greece is also looking into that at the moment. And then in the Baltic country, we've done some work for Estonia, where I think something may come as well. Obviously, it's something quite simple to introduce. It's something that is quite good to attract production from abroad. It also, of course, works. I mean, it depends. There are different schemes, but most of them work for local productions as well. And obviously, I mean, obviously, there are two difficulties, I would say. First, they are bound to disappear at some point, because obviously, especially from the EU point of view, it's a bit against the EU competition rules, because you give a specific advantage if you go in one region of Europe more than another region. So, I mean, there have been already some communications about it. So they are bound to disappear in, not necessarily now, but I don't know, in the next 5 years, maybe they are going to disappear. So that's obviously a problem. And the second problem is obviously it's a kind of race to be the cheapest, because everybody's starting to put 20%, 30%, 40%, and it starts to be a very competitive market just on tax, on cash rebate, which is not obviously what is very interesting for the different countries. I mean, there are different criteria, different factors to use it. I mean, of course, one is the level, if it's 20%, 30%, etc. But obviously, that means you have to spend a lot of money in this country. So can you spend on something in this country? I mean, to go back to Kosovo, they can put 50%, there's not much. I mean, there's no studio, there's no post-production, etc. So you can't really spend, so it's difficult. The third criteria, I think, which is interesting, is the compatibility with other systems. Okay, so for example, the German system, the German tax incentive is quite compatible. That means the criteria are very flexible, so you can use different types of system with that. So for example, it helps. So it really depends. There are some different parts. I mean, I would say at the moment, France and Germany are quite easy to use and been very compatible. And obviously, France and Germany What is interesting is on top you can get subsidies. So you go there, you shoot, but you can get a co-producer who will bring you money. Italy and Spain are very difficult to get because they manage to create a system, different laws that are very difficult to use. Italy is getting a bit better. There are a few projects now done in Italy, but in Spain it's still difficult. UK is also interesting, but it's not very compatible. So if you do a co-production in Europe and you want to include UK, it's just very difficult. But it depends on the project, I would say. After, in the smaller countries, especially from Central Europe, I would say, obviously it's already cheap to shoot there, or cheaper. So with the tax credits, even cheaper. So it's obviously could be interesting. So each of them has something interesting to offer. So I mean, basically what I'm trying to say, yes, is that okay, we have all that, but is it really enough today? As we know, that there are less and less pre-sales. It's very difficult to get pre-sales from broadcasters or from distribution companies. There are less subsidies in a way, or it will go. I mean, some countries there's never been any subsidy. In other countries, it's been reduced. In other countries, it will reduce. We all know that. And also, it's attached to more and more higher local spend. So, okay, you get money, but you have to spend it, or you have to spend it twice the amount in this region. So, the lack of cash flow financing, so we'll talk about that. Now, for marketing, for distribution, you need to have more new marketing partners. So they are not part of any of these schemes, for example. We never heard the name, the word marketing. I mean, okay, at media, on the distribution part, there are something on the marketing. In different schemes, in different countries, there is, but not much. The transmedia, everybody's talking about that. There are many things, and again, there are not many projects or schemes that are on transmedia. All the new distribution challenge. I mean, one of the distribution challenge is that we are producing more and more films every year in Europe. As in US, they are producing less and less films every year. So I think there is a question about that. And you have more and more platforms where you can distribute your film. So that's maybe a way, but still we have a lot of films. And in the cinema, there is a problem where you can find space. And there's no gap finance. I mean, it's very difficult to get gap finance today, even though we know that if you put all these different mix of financing I explained to you, at the end there's always a gap, 5%, 10%, 20%. So what do you do with this gap? Okay, so that's also something important. So what I'm trying to tell you a bit is that obviously we have to move from this kind of subsidy-only model to get more into more sustainability. And we have to involve new financial partners. I mean, I think there is no way around it. We can't just say, okay, we're going to stop and stay with the subsidies. No, we have to look at new financial partners. So I'm just going to give you some ideas, because obviously, unfortunately, I don't have the answers, because it's still, I mean, as you know, it's changing. We are in this process. It's going to take a lot of time before everything changes. But there are some things already moving. I see 4 points that I think could be interesting to look at. The company capitalization, so that means, I'll talk about it, but moving from project to company. The transmedia approach, the crowdfunding, I think you have a presentation later on that, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. And then the cash flow financing linking to the guarantee fund that we've done. So every time I'm going to give you some example. So obviously the company capitalization. I mean, the problem of this sector is that you have many small companies that are undercapitalized. That means they don't have any equity for their company, and obviously it's difficult because they don't have money to hire people, they don't have money to develop projects enough time, and they have to go into this project financing very quickly. Because basically they get money from the project financing. So we need to change that. So we need to move as well from a single project to slate financing. And we need to look for equity investment. Obviously, it's very easy to say, but it's very difficult to do. So it's very simple to say that. But of course, there are some problems. I mean, first, this problem of immaterial assets that the companies have. I mean, what you have, your asset, your IP, what's the value of this IP? Nobody knows. You don't know exactly. Bankers don't know. Financiers don't know. There's no methodology for that, for valuation. So as long as we cannot be clearer on that, on this asset, nobody will be interested in that. Again, the lack of expertise. You know, people don't understand this sector, our sector, so they don't want to do that. And then, okay, negative company results. I mean, most of the companies involved, I mean, obviously, it depends, etc. But very often, they are obviously for a project, but at the end, the results of the companies are quite negative. So for financiers, it's obviously not very interesting because they look at companies with positive results. So there is a real problem. So what to do? Just again, some ideas. I mean, very simple. It's basically to develop something attractive for the investors. Okay? Sounds very simple, but in a way, you have to develop something that could be interesting. And the first thing to remember, if you want to attract investors, what they are looking for is they are looking for high risk, high return. Okay? And in fact, if you think about our sector, we are not very high risk. I know everybody says it's very risky, but if you think about it, and if you, I mean, you are from the sector, in fact, it's not so risky. Okay, you don't know whether the film's going to be a success. I think apart from the problem of finishing the film, after, if you have enough pre-sales, or if you have your financing and your partners in place, I mean, okay, there is a risk, but it's not so high risk. Okay. The second problem also is that it's not high returns. Not very much. I mean, of course, you have some examples, and you have Intouchable, you know, you have a few examples in Europe where you see a very big high return. But most of the films, they are not very high return. Okay, they did a success, they did well, they made more, but it's not a high risk, high return, sorry. So think about that. What the investors are looking for is high risk, high return. The second thing they are looking for is global reach, is to be able to sell this project everywhere in the world, because basically they are paid on distribution, so the more it's going to be sold you know, everywhere, the better it will be. Remember the US system, it's basically based on that. And then the value creation. I mean, basically you need to create value so that you go back to this asset. Second thing is you need to target expert investors. Obviously, if you talk to an investor who is specialized in biotechnology, you know, there's a good chance, okay, he's an investor, he has money, but there's a good chance that he say, okay, I have no idea, I don't understand, I don't want to talk to you. Okay? So try to understand who could be interested. For example, that's why we created this investment network, is because we are spending a lot of time trying to find people who has an interest. Not everybody is interested in that, but you can see something. I mean, some are interested, some are doing it a little bit, and some are not very far. I mean, for example, you know, many people involved in technology investment, they are not so far from what we're talking about. So try to get to know them and linking with them. Then the second thing, another thing is really to link production to distribution. Today, I mean, the risk is really based on the production. On the distribution, you are closer to the customer, and it's very important to link these two things. If you look at the few deals that have been done in private investment or venture capital in Europe today, they have been done basically on distribution companies who were able to become co-producer as well. People like Wild Bunch, for example. I mean, it's a distribution company, but the money they are using in terms of VC money that they receive quite a lot of that, they are using it to also co-produce film. Okay? So it's moving from production to distribution and back to production. I think that's very important. Again, to integrate the distribution in the offer. People are not interested to understand how much you need to do a movie. What they need to understand is how much you're going to sell, on which platform, and what it's going to bring back. And from that, okay, you can get this amount of money to do your film. And then, obviously, when we talk about slate, we know that the difficulty is that you don't have the time to develop 10 projects at the same time. It's a lot of time. It's very difficult. You know, it's not easy. So try to do more, I think, more working together with other companies. For example, in Denmark, if you look at what happened in Denmark, many companies have been trying to work together and develop slate of projects also for television together. And I think that's a model that is quite attractive to people. The second thing is about transmedia approach. I mean, transmedia, I think the first thing to say is that film is not alone anymore. I mean, I think to think that film is going to be staying like that just as a film and being shown on cinema and that's it, I think this is over. There is a need for linking with many other sectors. I mean, okay, video games, but other type of sector. Should include new types of revenues and, of course, new distribution strategy. I mean, that is very clear, I think, for everyone. So that's really on the transmedia. And I think what is interesting, if you look at the transmedia approach, is that it brings different types of financing when you're working on, so the film, games, internet, mobile, I mean, for example, but it brings and it adds new revenues. And I think that's what is interesting, is that you can really link new types of revenues by adding these different media, different platforms. And I think it's not easy, huh? And it's not something that people do all the time, but it's where it goes. And I think where it brings something to people, it really brings some new revenues. Also, think about brand integration. I think that's also important. Product placement, and brands are very, very interested in being part of that. I'm not sure about what the situation in Poland, but in many countries, things are changing now quite quickly about the role of the brands in entertainment. So that's something very very important. And then the distribution, obviously, now with digital distribution, you can access many new markets with a different price, of course. But that's, of course, opens some new revenue streams. For example, you have different examples like that, but I think the most interesting I know is the one in the north of France, which is a 1.2 million euro fund just for transmedia projects. Also, it's got a cross-border access because it's with Belgium. So it's between France and Belgium, so it's quite interesting. And also it's good because it's investing in projects and in companies, both of that. And it exists for about 2 years, and now they have 20% more for 2013, so must be working. Crowdfunding, so I'm sure you have this presentation after. Just a few words, because you will know, I mean, as you know, there are many platforms in Europe now, but very few are focusing on cinema. Most of them now are very generalist, a bit like Kickstarter. They are not really on cinema, but they are doing anything. Okay, so there are a few now in cinema, but not so much. The average finance that is raised, I think, seems to go up. We're moving from the small amounts to something a bit bigger. Some platforms definitely have a model that is not just based on raising money, but also, for example, being a video-on-demand platform. So that's where it's also moving a bit like that. There are some business-to-business platforms as well. I don't know if you know, but for example, that this platform called People for Cinema, which is a crowdfunding platform for distributors. So it's for films that are finished and are looking for marketing and distribution money. And anyone can put money into that, but it's just dedicated to that, to help distributors to really go to a good strategy for distribution and marketing. So I think that even though it's not easy.
What's the name of that again?
Sorry?
What's the name?
People for Cinema, it's called. Just a word about that. I mean, they've been existing for about 2 or 3 years. I think they've established, I mean, now they are going international. They have established some interesting models, but it seems that the distributors don't take them too seriously because the amount are not very big yet. I mean, the amount are quite limited. So I think there is also there, a gap between what the distributor think and. So I need to finish, but I'm not finished. But slowly. Okay. No. Okay. One thing that I think is important is the professional investors. When we've been talking to many investors in this summer about crowdfunding platform, we've been asking them what they think about it, and most of them say that they don't really understand how it works. It's project financing, so it's not what they know, but they definitely said that they have a strong interest and they think it's going to be there to stay. So I think there will be more and more people, professional investors interested in that. Because in any case, it's a good market research platform for investors. So maybe very quickly on Iron Sky, I suppose you know quite a lot about this example, but we've done a little bit of work for them on raising some of the money. But just quickly, it's a 7.5 million euro budget. It was a co-production. Obviously, it didn't happen in 6 months. It was a very long process to work on that and to develop the production. So I'm going to skip that. The financing, it's been financed between Finland, Germany, and Australia. And it was shot in Australia mainly, and in Finland, a bit in Frankfurt in Germany. What is interesting is that they did 3 things. They did crowdsourcing, so where people were involved in the making and in the development of the film. Crowdfunding, so where they actually got some money from the people. But they also did, and that's where we worked on, is the crowd investing. Okay, so to have professional investors to come on that and to put higher amounts of money. What is interesting is that obviously all that really help. I mean, the characteristics really that this money attracts other money. That's very important. And the more you can get, the more you can get part of that. The urgency. For them, it was very important because many times they wanted to stop because they didn't have the money. So through the crowdfunding, they managed to get some money back every time and to be back on track. And then the community management, of course, is important. So the number of supports, you see obviously Germany, Australia, Finland were the most interested. In Poland is not very far, in fact. Okay, I'm finishing the last part. It's about cash flow financing. So it's this question of how the banks can be involved in terms of lending money to companies, big subject. As I say, we did this study that included, let's say, I don't know why I put 5, it's 4. 4 types of lending. The first, which is interim finance. I'll go back to that because that's the main one at the end. Tax incentive financing, so bank lending money against the tax incentive, the tax credit, the tax shelter amount. Gap finance, that is not very used today. And working capital, so basically for companies, that is also not so much developed. So interim finance is basically the cash flow you need on the production once you have fully financed your project and that you have contracts but you don't have the money straight away. Okay, so you have a certain number of contracts from distributors, from subsidies, from regional funds, from broadcaster, but they don't give you the cash. They say, okay, we give you the money once principal photography starts, when the film is finished, once the film is in the cinema, etc. But still, you need the money to finance the production. So that's where the banks are active a little bit in Europe. I mean, mainly in the UK, in Germany, in France, a little bit in Spain as well. And when we did the study, what we saw is that the only countries where there is a strong interim finance business was where there was a bank guarantee for interim finance. So if you look at France, Germany, and Spain, every time you have a guarantee system that helps this bank to limit their risk. Okay? So the idea to media was to recommend to create a pan-European guarantee fund, a system that is a bit similar to this system in other countries, but will work everywhere in Europe.
It's not dependent on the completion guarantee as well? Or?
No. So I'll talk about it quickly. So basically, the recommendation was to do a pan-European guarantee fund. And now we have 2 funds offering that, one in Spain and one in France, by 2 banks. One is IFSIC in France, and the other one is Audiovisual SGR in Spain, who offer this kind of guarantee to banks. So we are working with the Spanish one to make it clear. We started in 2011, and just for you to know, normally if everything goes well, as from 2014 there will be a second fund that will be on top of this one, which will be for all the creative industries. So it's a guarantee to banks. It's bringing 50% for interim finance. So the fund in Spain, for example, is 6 million euro. So we're using a leverage coefficient. That means with 6 million euro, in fact, we can give guarantee up to 40, 50 million euro in Europe. So that's only 50%. So we're coming to quite high numbers in terms of lending. And it's, as I say, it's support producer with fully financed projects in accessing bank loans. It's cash flow against contracts, only against contract. So it's not for gap, and it's not like a completion bound. Okay? Now, on your question, we don't ask for a completion bound. So, I mean, the way it should work is that you are a producer, you have your project fully financed, 100%. You have all your contracts. You go to a bank. The bank say, okay, I'm ready to give you the 400 or 300,000 euro you have in your contract, but I need a guarantee from you, a personal guarantee. Okay, and you say, well, I don't have a personal guarantee, I don't want to give a personal guarantee, and you come to us, and we try to bring 50% to that. Okay. So the criteria are very simple. It's maximum guarantee of 1.2 million euro per project. It's for independent producers in media. It's for European project. And we do film, television, and multiple projects. If SIC in France is doing only film projects, not TV. The benefits for banks, I mean, obviously, we are trying to have a local approach. So, for example, we are offering the bank guarantee, for example, in Poland, we could offer it in zloty. What we do is we transfer expertise we have. So we understand these different contracts. We can explain to this bank, to your bank, why this contract is secure or why this contract is not so secure. It's a guarantee, what we call first call guarantee, meaning that as soon there is a default payment, they can call us and we can pay directly. It's a very easy integration in the loan contract. So most of the time we are part of the appendix. It's very simple, just a guarantee. So it's a due diligence a second due diligence for the bank. And what we are trying to do is to develop framework agreements with banks. So these are other projects that we've been also involved in. So mostly co-production projects. So as I say, the way to apply is you are the producer, you need to find a bank. I mean, again, with Joanna, that's something that we've been trying is to identify some banks, etc. To be honest, in Poland, until now, we haven't managed to do that. But in other countries, we've managed to do it now. In other countries where there was no banks, so Finland, Iceland, the Netherlands, now we've got some banks. In the UK, we're creating new banks. We have new banks interested in Germany as well. And then we can help to give you an idea about the guarantee. I mean, what I say about that is that we're not going to give you the guarantee before. We're just going to give you, okay, based on what we see, normally we will give you the guarantee. And then you can finalize with the bank, and then we can give you the approval after that. So just to finish, conclusion. Sorry. I mean, all I said today, I think it's going back to kind of the same thing. I mean, it's a lot about digital distribution. I think it's a lot about mixing public and private financing. It's a lot about involving new people, new financiers on that. I think we need to be very creative about that. It's training producers for investment readiness, and it's training financiers for understanding the sector. This idea of portfolio returns, I think if we think that we were going to get some return on investment on single project, I think it's going to be impossible to sell to investors. And then we see by the crowdfunding and the digital distribution and all that, that we have to involve communities that are basically people who are going to watch or will be watching the movies. I think that's very important.
Portfolio, you mean slate? Yeah?
Slate, but when I say portfolio, it can be diversified. What I explained before is, for example, on equity, it can be video games and film. It can be open, I think, on that. I think that could be something that's more attractive to people. Thank you.